Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Money Mindset Hub podcast. So I'm your host, Carla Townsend, and I'm a money mindset and success coach for female entrepreneurs who are ready to eliminate their money blocks and monetize their genius. Now, today I have an incredible guest, Mary Joyce, with me. So Mary Joyce is a trauma and transition life coach. She helps people just like you rediscover their passion and purpose, break through their limiting beliefs, and transition into the best version of themselves. Welcome, Mary Joyce.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you again for having me.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. So I think first off, can you please tell us what it means by you're a trauma and a transition life coach?
So, having gone through my own journey from my own past traumas, being able to hold a safe space for women and men as well, and just being able to share that safe space where they can be heard and understood and be seen. From where I came from, I felt like during my time, I think it's also to do with generational trauma. We don't really have that kind of understanding or that connection with our elders to talk about that. So being able to do what I do and helping people speak about their past traumas and transition from this space where they're hindered from those past experiences and things that have held them back, and just help them transition into becoming their true self.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I think there is so many people that are held back or that allow it to be the reason their past or whatever might have happened to them to stop them from going for what it is that they want, their North Star. And it's
Yes.
really devastating because you can see so much potential in
Yes.
everybody. I do
Yes.
believe, and maybe you're the same as well, but we were here for a reason. There's a reason
Yep.
that we're here. And it is sad to see that trauma can hold people back from
Yes.
stepping into their fullest potential.
Yes. And I think one of the greatest things that's attached to people when it comes to trauma is also that sense of fear. Like a lot of things that come with trauma is like generational trauma, cultural trauma, childhood trauma, whatever trauma it is. The biggest thing that's instilled in everyone is fear. And fear is always going to be that one thing that limits you from being your true potential.
Oh, absolutely. One way I explain fear to my clients is there is two types of fear. Fear of, say, jumping off a cliff. And if I jump off this cliff, there is potential that I could die. And
Yeah.
then there's another sort of fear, which is like a roller coaster. Like this is going to be terrifying on the journey, but at the end, I'll be so grateful that one, it's ended, and two, I made it. Like I feel like there is always two sorts of fear. I think the more too that you just feel the fear and you do it anyway, when you know it's a roller coaster kind of fear, the more that you begin to unlock those levels. And like what you
Yes,
do, you help
100%.
people, you
Yes,
know?
100%. And being able to be in this position, it really is a rewarding thing to do. And I'm sure it's the same for you, being able to help people unlock that part of their mind and their being when it comes to the mindset for money, right? There's just so much more abundance when you're able to confront those feelings, those traumas, those experiences, and then come to realization that, wow, I'm actually more powerful than I've ever allowed myself to believe.
Mm, yeah. And I mean, on that too, it's such an emotional game. Like even money, it's such an emotional game. And it's not something that should hold us back, but it's just so psychological. Everything is
It
so
is.
psychological.
Yes. Yes.
So I know that you work a lot with your clients when it comes to self-care and self-worth and self-love.
Yes.
Can you tell us how you do that or sort of explain it a bit more?
Yes. So I call it the cycle of selves. And it's to do with self care, self love, and self worth. And I believe each is a foundation to itself. So we start with self care. And I ask them, what does self care mean to you? Or what does self love mean to you? Or self worth mean to you? And they kind of stumble. So then I break it down for them. I said, okay, well, let's take away the word self. What does care mean to you? What does love mean to you? What does worth mean to you? How do you care or love those around you? How do you show other people their worth? And they're able to answer that so easily. So then I ask them, so then why can't you answer it when you just put that word self in front of it? Because the things that you do for others and how you show them care should be the same thing that you do for yourself. And we start with someone's values. And we think our values has to do with those around us and how we want to have a relationship with themselves. And it's values that we hold within ourselves. So say, for instance, if connection is a value that you have, well, do you hold that value within you? Do you have that connection within yourself? And so I'd call it the circle because self-care is really putting yourself first And that is the foundation to self-love, because to show yourself love, you need to prioritize yourself. And when you're able to show yourself love, that means that you're planting that foundation to self-worth, because you know you're worthy when you're able to show yourself that love without that hesitation, without contradiction, without second thoughts, without that doubt. And when you know your worth, putting yourself first is a priority. And it's not something that you ever second guess again, because self-care, again, is the foundation for worth. And what holds that together is trust. Because if you don't trust in yourself, obviously there's always going to be one thing that has to hold everything together. So building that relationship with yourself and having that trust is going to hold that circle, that wheel of self together. And so
Yeah.
that's how I work with my clients, and we build on that. And it's just, for them, it's mind boggling. They're just thinking, oh, we always just think self-care is just about going to retail therapy or getting a massage. But there's so many things. There's 8 dimensions to self-care, and like physical rest and all these other aspects. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe with your clients as well. When it comes to self-trust, like you were saying, like you need to be able to build self-trust, right? It's one of those key areas. Do you find that when people start to actually uncover their self, they're a little bit scared to, because we all have shadow sides, right?
Yeah.
And the more inner work that you do, the more that they will come out. Do you feel that people are a bit more scared of what will come up, like what is actually under the surface, the more that they dive in? And so it's
100%.
easier not
Yes.
to?
Yes. So most of the clients that I've had, it's because the generational trauma or the cultural trauma. And I'm pretty sure it's the same for people of our generation. We've grown up in a place where we've been silenced. And I feel that we're in that kind of generation where we're in between, where it's like there's a generation that was silenced, and then there's the generation after us that has that awareness. And so we're stuck in this space like, well, I don't know. I was told that this wasn't something that we do. We just keep pushing forward. But 100% they get scared, because vulnerability or crying or feeling our emotions, it's always being seen as a weakness. And what I try to get to people to understand is our vulnerability is our strength.
Mm,
Because when we are vulnerable within ourselves and we come to understand who we truly are and own our story, no one else can write our own story. And that's
mm.
where the limiting beliefs come from. And I'm sure you go through that process as well. When you peel down those layers within your clients, it's like, wow, these truths that I thought that were mine, these beliefs that I thought were mine, or these stories that I thought were mine, they are not me. That's not what makes me who I am.
Yeah, definitely not. And I could completely butcher this, but I'm pretty sure the word vulnerable comes from a Latin word, like vulnerable or something like that. It's a Latin word and it means to like open yourself up to potential injury. So it is opening yourself up for, for judgment, for
Yes.
people to be misunderstood. There's so many
Yes.
things where becoming vulnerable, but I think even just on a personal level, if you can become vulnerable with yourself and you can just be the objective observer of yourself and not allow those thoughts or those beliefs to mean anything, then that's when you can begin to really break yourself down, you know?
Yes. Yes.
It's so interesting how it works, and it truly is. It's so complex too, but I definitely know that the self-worth, like the work that you do, is so powerful because self-worth ties to everything. It
It
literally is the
does.
foundation of everything. Every belief that we have all is tied to our self-worth and how worthy or not worthy we believe that we are. Unworthy? Unworthy.
Unworthy.
No,
Yeah.
that's what it truly is though. Like,
It's all
whether
right.
it comes
We're making new words today.
So I truly believe that that is just that's the root of everything. It comes off that. So also, I love that you were touching on the limiting beliefs. So definitely that's one of the areas that I'm so passionate about because I mean, just before we were talking, I was saying how even my confidence has grown into like doing a speaking gig later in this year. And 9 years ago, I could not speak at my wedding to say thank you to my own guests. And then there was a full circle moment because I didn't believe that I could do public speaking. I would literally say, I can't do public speaking. I'm just not good at it. I'm not good at speaking in front of an audience, which
Yeah.
is wild. It is wild, some of the things that we actually tell ourselves. And then because we tell ourselves those things and think them repetitively, they then become a belief and they can be complete bullshit. So, what are some of the things that you do in order to help your clients be able to release the limiting beliefs and create new ones that are actually true to them?
Yeah, so I do an NLP session with them and I get them to visualize them. So I actually tell them, like, what is this limiting belief? What does it look like? What does it sound like? If it had an emotion to it, what would be attached to it? And when they're able to visualize that, they can see all the negativity or the darkness that's attached to that. And then I ask them, okay, well, then go back to another time. And so actually ask them, like, picture yourself, a younger self that is attached to that belief. And then what's the new belief? And they'll picture something that's on the opposite end, something more brighter, something that's more light, something that is more them, that's something that brings them joy and happiness. And when we're able to use our senses, and I honestly believe that talking about our limiting beliefs isn't just something that's just done overnight. It is a working process. And people think that once you do something like that, it's an instant thing, but it is an ongoing thing. But I get them to visualize that. And so I get them at the end to just go, okay, so imagine that first, imagine that turning into this image and that emotion turning into this emotion and this emotion turning into that and that feeling turning into this. And at the end, because they're embodying that new feeling, because they know that that's been a part of them for the longest time, they're actually tapping into who they truly are. And there's moments when they actually do break down and they're like, oh my gosh, how have I allowed myself to believe this about myself for so long? How have I allowed myself to be trapped in this mind thinking I'm unworthy? I'm just worthy of failure. I'm not worthy of success. I'm not worthy of love, not just from others. I'm not worthy of self love. And when I get them to just vision that for themselves, and at the end of it, they just open their eyes and you're just like, I never thought that I could believe something like that. I never thought that a belief that I see others have could be a belief that I could have.
Mm.
And when they go through that process, it takes them a while to kind of integrate that in and have that to sink in. But there's little changes because they're able to visualize the two ends. They're like, but I don't want to feel this because I felt that for the longest time. And so they do little things for themselves, whether it be daily habits or affirmations, especially like with their self talk. Self talk is a huge thing when it comes to our limiting beliefs because we are what we tell ourselves, what we feed our minds. And so they go through this process. And sometimes it is an instant thing for them. Sometimes it is a process. But I'm grateful to see from my past clients, it has been something that they've continuously worked on and built on and worked away from those past limiting beliefs.
Yeah. It's continual too. So I think that's so beautiful. And it also just paints the picture that it isn't something that we don't just go into this belief work and all of a sudden, like, we'll be healed. You
Yes.
know, it'll be done, like you said, that there's so many layers to them. And you probably find this too, but there are certain ones that actually keep coming up. There are certain ones that are so
Yes.
deeply instilled, and they're ones that are typically more generational
Yes.
or they're stemmed from trauma. Trauma is very personal. So
Yes.
you could talk more on that, but the trauma is so personal. So there really is such an array of emotions that people can go through, and there is no right or wrong. And also, it's a really good reminder not to make yourself right or wrong for feeling any way that you feel or having a belief about yourself or something you've picked up or something you've just believed is truth because of that's all you've known or that's what you've seen. And it is more
Yes.
generational and it's from your childhood. But there are so many things that you can actually do to go back and rewrite it. And often I think it does take someone like you, a facilitator, to be able to actually have that neutrality to look at your position and to take you through those emotions for then you to be able to actually see it for yourself. So
Yes.
I do that work, but then I've had coaches and mentors and healers help me also go through that work because you can only take yourself to a certain point. Like you can only take yourself to the depths that you'll allow yourself to go. And then
Yes.
sometimes it is when someone like you then can come in and go, oh my God, this one I feel like I knock it on the head and then it just keeps rearing its ugly head just ever so sneakily.
Yes.
Because do you find too, when it comes to limiting beliefs, there are different ways in which they come up. And sometimes they're so unconscious. I notice this
Yes.
with money, especially. It's so
Yes.
unconscious that they can't even see that they're doing it and why they're doing it and how to shift it because they're not even aware that it's actually happening.
Yeah. That happens a lot. So it's like they think, oh, I'm in a better place now. Nothing else is going to come up. But because there are so many things that are so like ingrained so deeply in us, again, it comes back to all these layers. And I think that's one thing, this misconception that people have is once you've gone on this healing journey, you're going to be perfect. Nothing else is going to happen. You don't need to do any more healing for yourself. But that's not true. We are forever in a period of growth and healing and becoming. And even I myself, I still have to do things for myself for my personal healing and growth. And I think the more we have that self awareness, the more without even realizing subconsciously, we are in a more powerful state of being to be able to confront that limiting belief. We may not see it at that point in time, but we are in a place that we're able to confront it. And that's why it's coming to surface.
Mm, so interesting. So then just put you on the spot a little bit.
Yes. Go ahead.
So what are, say, the top two limiting beliefs that you've had to overcome yourself?
For me, it was I'm not worthy of love and I am not worthy of success.
Yeah.
So for me, I think my parents, a lot of my story has to do with a lot of generational trauma and cultural trauma. But also my parents having been first generation, having migrated here from the Philippines, there was a lot to do with the scarcity mindset when it comes to opportunities and to money. So for the longest time for me, I thought, oh, the only way that I'm ever going to make money is if I'm going to work really hard for someone else 9 to 5. But then when like an opportunity comes up for me, I'm like, oh, no, I'm not worthy of that. But it's that fear. It's that limiting belief that I took on from my parents. And I know they didn't mean anything of it. It's just because like you mentioned it earlier, that's all they knew when it's the best that they could do. And I guess because again, that fear, it's something that they never really experienced themselves, not something that they could guide me through. And so I was just kept in this space of, you know what, I'm just going to do the 9 to 5, stay in my books. And when it came to like, I'm not worthy of love, I think I just used ways of like relationships or, you know, how we try to find ourselves in other people or have that connection with other people because I didn't know who I was. I never allowed myself to have that connection with myself. And so for the longest time, I allowed myself, my being to be dictated by other people. I allowed my future and my story to be defined by the words of other people.
Oh,
So,
honestly, I just had a lot coming up just then. I could feel it in my
oh
body.
no. So
And
cute.
you said, no, like, no, it's really, really good. There was a lot. You said something just then, and I was like, you were getting defined by other people and you didn't know who you were. You had to find yourself. That is exactly how I felt for most of my life until I really started to go on this
Crazy.
journey. Yeah. I didn't even know who I was. I didn't even know what I liked to wear, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't even know what colors I'd like to wear or how I like to dress. I couldn't even dress myself to feel good, if that makes sense. Like,
Yes.
I'd
They're
wear
like, oh,
clothes
put
that
something on to make you feel good. I'm like, but I don't know what makes me feel good. I don't know
exactly,
what I feel beautiful in.
exactly. I had no understanding of, well, who is color beyond the external things. And
Yeah.
then fast forward, here we are. But it is one hell of a journey and it is one hell of an awakening to realize that I wouldn't say that I was a shell of a person. There was a point in my life that, yes, I definitely was. And I was getting the support that I needed to get through that. And then I got out the other side and it was, I still don't know who I am. I don't know what self love is. I don't know what self care is. I'm just doing the bare minimum that I learnt already and what I'm observing already. But I didn't know how to get beyond that. So I think it's honestly just amazing the work that you're doing because for anyone who's listening that just feels like they're a bit stuck, they're stagnant, they need to find themselves, they need to find that clarity in who they are and what is it that they want to do and work through whatever traumas it is that they're going through. There's so much stuff that you can do. Like you're never at the end of your story. Like you said, we are the author of our stories and we get to decide that no, I get to stop feeling like this. I don't need to feel like this. I can be whoever I want to be. You can
Mhm.
create whatever you want to create, but you will always create what you believe that you
Yes.
can create, right? Like it's always subconscious. You'll create to the extent that you believe that you can. And so that's where this inner work comes in. And like you said, you never stop doing it. I want to talk about more of that generational trauma too, because I know that you had to work through a lot of that yourself. But can you explain for anyone listening who's just like, what do you mean by generational trauma? Like from parents, grandparents, but other than that, can you explain it a bit more in depth for people listening to understand what it might be so they can be aware of maybe where they have generational trauma patterns that are just creating this self perpetuating cycle in their lives?
Yeah, so it's just like, say, for instance, for us, we have our own personal traumas, and it's something that's happened to us and it hinders us from moving on in our own personal lives. It's the same with our generational trauma. So it can go back many generations before us, whether it be a fear that has been instilled within our ancestors that's allowed them to have this kind of mindset for the longest time that's just being passed on to the next generation. And that next generation who's learned this particular way of living has made that their own belief as well, has further then hindered the next generation from being the best part of them. So it's like this big ripple effect to the point where it gets to a point that that trauma is so huge that when it comes to, say, for instance, our bloodline, right? We have that awareness. And I truly believe this generation and the next are the generations that are doing a lot of work in breaking these generational curses and traumas because of that awareness, with that freedom of speech and being able to freely think outside of what others have dictated. Like I said, that trauma is because the elders and the community around them have always defined what it is that they need to believe. And because of these beliefs, it's done so much pain and it's given so much hindrance to so many people that it's just caused trauma. And there's so many things when it comes to generational trauma, whether it be the lifestyle, whether it be the way that we have relationships with each other, how we speak to ourselves, how we communicate. There is so many layers when it comes to that.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. God, my mind goes in 100 miles an hour when you're talking. I'm like, wow, there is so much to it. It's such a multifaceted thing. And what do you think for someone then listening and going, oh, yes, I can see this. I can see these patterns and I want to stop these patterns. I don't want to
Yes.
continue them on. What would you say would be a brilliant first step for them if they want to be that pattern interrupter in their generation? Like you said, this generation and the next, I 100% agree with you. We
Yeah.
are so, the kids say woke.
Yes.
I love it now you get to that point where you're like, I can say, I can say that, But, I feel like it's true. We have much more of a freedom of speech, but I think that you're right in the sense that we're very aware of what's going on. We're far more aware than what our parents and our grandparents and great grandparents used to be, but they also weren't allowed. They didn't have the information. We are so lucky, this generation, to have the information readily available to us.
Yes.
What would you say for then someone who is this well, it doesn't matter really what generation, but if you're listening to this, you obviously want to do something and work on yourself. So what would you say to them who are listening that are just like, that's it? It stops here. The buck stops
Yeah.
here.
If they want something to stop, I think they have to start within themselves,
Mm.
because that trauma is something that we've carried in within ourselves and we have lived that way for so many years. And I think a lot of people think that, oh, if I'm going to stop this, I'm going to address it with my elders, with my parents, with the family. But that's going to actually cause more of a rift. And until you have that work within yourself and you have that awareness and knowing what it is that you've taken on board, only when you work on yourself are you able to truly break yourself free from that. Because in order for you to kind of have that kind of conversation with your family, you need to have an understanding of yourself first, because they're going to come back to it and be like, what are you talking about? Where did you learn this from? Why are you doing this? And they're going to bring that trauma back onto you and they're going to put it back onto you. So if you're wanting to do something and be the person that breaks the chains to the curses, to the generational trauma, it starts within you. Believe in yourself that you are worthy of doing that self work, that you are capable of doing that hard work. And like we say, there is a reason for us. We all have a purpose. And for you to have that thought, it's not just a thought in passing. If you're listening and you're hearing this now, it's for a reason, because maybe you are that chosen person to break those chains, or you're that person that's going to guide them. Because I know there's some people who have tried to do that work, but they just don't know how. Well, this is your sign. The work starts within you. You need to work on yourself first and heal those parts of you that have been broken for the longest time. And only once you start to become whole, then you're able to find the answers that you've always been wanting, or actually creating the closure and giving yourself the answers that you are deserving of.
Yeah. And you did mention there too that family. So I
Yes.
know when you were talking, I can already feel like there's going to be questions about, but how do I stop this trauma, these patterns, these habits, these cycles of behavior from continuing on without addressing it? And how do you address it if it gets to the point where you need to? Like boundaries, really. We're talking about boundaries and
Yes.
setting standards with especially your loved ones, because that is one of the most difficult things to do. And 100%, I agree with you. The first step is not to address it. The first step is to have the awareness, to accept, to forgive, to love, all within you first. And I say forgiveness in the sense of, with respect to trauma and things too, but forgiveness is about us forgiving for us.
Yes.
It's about us not holding on to that energy any longer. It's not forgiving someone else for what they did, what they said, or whatever it might be. It's not forgiving them for their sake. It's forgiveness within yourself to free
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
And then from that point, then after that, let's say someone has done that, they have forgiven whoever it was, a loved one or whatever it might be, for something that was said, something that was done, and they've become very aware of it. And now they're at the point where, say, this behavior continues and they need to set the boundaries and standards there and they have to address it. What would be the most appropriate way? Obviously, there is so many different answers to this question because it really just depends on the dynamic, okay? And I definitely have personally set many boundaries in my life and set standards and just disengage in certain conversations or don't engage in certain conversations or whatever it might be. But say for someone who's like, but I have a really difficult person in my family and no matter what, I just can't seem to get past it. What would
Yes.
you do in that situation?
I think sometimes it's also just trying to understand their point of view as well. So for me, I wouldn't say I didn't have the best relationship with my mom. It was one that was like a bit, does she love me? Does she not love me? But when I did that work on myself, I came to understand that she was only doing the best that she could because she didn't know how else. So one thing I say is we can't mirror something that we've never seen. So in my situation, I can't expect my mom to reciprocate my love in the way that I want her to if she herself has never received the love that I'm wanting from her. And it's the same with communication or talking to someone. Like in any situation, everyone has a story, and I get it. We are going to get hurt. We are in pain. But in those situations, the first thing I always say is try and see it from their point of view and where they're coming from and their own awareness. Because you can't say something to someone who doesn't have that education about it. And sometimes not having that conversation is the best thing that you can do. And having to say no and to walk away for the right reasons, but still with kindness and not causing even strain. I think that is one of the greatest but hardest boundaries that you can ever have.
It's a very courageous and brave thing to do, I think,
It,
to
it
do that.
really is. And it's very hard. I mean, you can try to have those conversations and you can open that topic and try to explain it. But when you're in that moment, you'll feel the tension and you'll probably feel these emotions. You're like, you know what? This isn't going anywhere. They can't truly see what I'm trying to, or they're not in a space where they're ready or they're willing or wanting, because we all have to be willing to do something, right? And we can't force it upon someone. And the moment that happens, that's when we have to tell ourselves, you know what, at least I know I came here from a good place. I came here from a place with love and kindness and wanting to understand. But if this is something that I can't do with them, then I need to accept that somehow, right? And there's different ways that we can do that. But you walk away from there knowing that you did your best and you didn't do nothing, knowing that you tried. And I think that's the best thing that you can do for yourself, to walk away knowing that you tried and not adding on to that trauma anymore.
Yeah. There's a big piece there around the language that you're using too when you are trying to address it, because I know I've definitely had these sorts of conversations in the past and I had to set some boundaries and set some standards. And it all 100% all started with me too. So I get that. And it was more so around having compassion, like you're saying, put yourself in the other person's shoes, having compassion and empathy for that person and knowing they don't understand my view and I'll never fully understand their view, and that's okay. But can we come to neutral ground without blaming or shaming or pointing the
Yeah.
finger because it needs to come from a neutral place. And if you're feeling those heightened emotions, you can't do that. No one's getting anywhere or nothing's really getting resolved if everyone's got heightened emotions, because studies do say that we're less intelligent when we have such heightened emotions, fight or flight emotions because of where the blood flows and whatever. That does come up so much. And I think it's going to continue to happen too. You were saying earlier your fear of like being successful
Yes.
as well. And even with that, as you hit new heights of becoming more successful, there again are going to be boundaries and standards that you need to set in place, and difficult conversations you potentially may have, or times where you may have to walk away. And I feel like that can also be hard. So this is sort of separate to the generational trauma type situations where perpetuating cycles continue. This is more of a, when you have these limiting beliefs that you're working through and then things start to actually come to fruition. So let's say success, because I truly believe, well, majority of the people listening to this will be entrepreneurs. And I know that the fear of success is up there. And personally, it's one of mine that has many, many layers. Now I'm not too worried about it, but I know that when I hit certain milestones or certain versions of myself, I know that it will creep up. Now, I have the awareness to know when it is creeping up, how it's creeping up, and what to do with it. But I know for a lot of people, they have the same thing, but they don't know what would they do then if they hit that level of success. How do they then deal and set boundaries when there's such a tie to an internal belief that they have? Does that make sense? My question was a bit whack there. So
No, I get it. No, I think it's most certainly to do with the fear of the unknown.
yeah.
Because all of us who are entrepreneurs, right, wanting to build that success, it's because we haven't seen this sort of success from anyone else. And majority of us who are wanting this sort of success, it's either for the time freedom, the financial freedom, and to just be our own boss. And most of the time, it's because we haven't had someone do that before us. We don't really have someone to look up in our family who's kind of set that standard or this blueprint to follow. And it's ultimately that fear of the unknown. But then we kind of have to ask ourselves, okay, well, what is it that I'm feeling? And then we ask ourselves, okay, what kind of person would believe that, right? And then we'll be like, oh, the person that would be fearful of success is someone who doesn't believe in themselves, who doesn't think that they're worthy. So in the other hand, you'll ask yourself, but am I this person? And you're like, no, I believe in myself. I know I am worthy. And once you have that kind of talk, you're like, you know what? I can do this. It's just because it's a new experience. And then you feel this newfound sense of empowerment and belief.
Yeah.
Because that's for me, I'm scared of success because I ultimately am afraid of the unknown, but I'm also afraid of that failure. But something I've learned and I need to preach to with myself is there is no such thing as failure. And I say these to my clients. Life is like a continuous moving wheel. It's going to have its ups and downs. And whether you're on that kind of down cycle and that down period of that wheel, take a look back because you've moved 100 steps forward. That
Yeah.
wheel's just been moving forward. You might think it's moving backwards, but it's not. And you think you failed, but you failed 10 times before then, but you learned each time. So that failure is never truly going to be a failure, but a lesson and the next step to your next step of success.
Yeah. I love everything you just said then. It's true. You can never fail. I don't believe in failure. I literally said to my clients this morning in a mastermind call, I said, the only time you ever fail is if you truly quit and give up on yourself,
Yeah.
which you're not about to do. And I
Yeah.
know for everyone listening, you're not about to do that. And I also just want to say as well, I truly hope that for everyone listening, that you can see from our conversation that it doesn't matter what level of success you're hitting, how much money you're making, how many clients you have, how big your business is. It doesn't matter what stage of life you are at. There is always something that you're going to learn and evolve and move and challenge yourself. There's always going to be a new edge. And I know there is for the both of us. It's very easy to look externally too and to see and to feel that everyone has their shit together. And to an extent, yes, because everyone has a lot of different lessons and learnings and an evolution. But at the same time, what you're seeing from the outside is not always necessarily what's going on the inside. And there is so many layers to block, so many layers to these beliefs that we have. And it's just nice to also know and reiterate that fact that regardless of what you see, you know, the people that you truly look up to, the ones that you are just like, they are killing it. Just remember they are still on this journey and will forever be on this journey because we're always a student and we're always trying to bridge a new gap, meet a new edge. It's
Yeah.
an evolution for life, especially if you're in entrepreneurship. That is just a lifelong,
It's just
lifelong
a
journey.
forever going journey. But also just touching on success, success can look different to everyone. Success to some may look like, oh, earning a six figure or seven figures, or success may just simply mean being able to be your own boss and being present with your family. And I think one thing that also adds on to that pressure to success is that comparison. And I think we need to kind of step away from comparing ourselves to others and also remember, like, what we see on social media isn't always everything because we actually choose what we want to share. So I
Yeah.
think that's something that I want each and every one of you to also remember is like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone's book 2, sequel 3 kind of thing,
Yeah. Exactly. And do you know what? When we think about social media, I know sometimes it can be painted in a bit of a negative light, you know, like, oh, it's just the highlight reel and things. But truly, that's what I want my feed to be. So,
that's nothing wrong with it.
yeah. And I see my Instagram feed is curated with possibilities and expansion and positive talk and all of these things meeting a new edge for me. Like it inspires, motivates, and activates me. So if your feed isn't doing that and it's making you feel like, oh, everyone just shows the good stuff and you're not feeling that great, curate it. You get to curate everything in your life and what you're absorbing, right? Everything you're taking in your social media feed, what you're watching on TV, the conversations that you're having in your daily life, everything that you allow yourself to consume is also consuming your mind. So curate what it is that you want to see. And I know maybe for you as well, this is what I did when I began and I was like, this is the path that I'm on. I curated it specifically and intentionally what conversations I was available for, what I wanted to view, what was expansive, everything that triggered me. Why did it trigger me? And I lent into it all, lent into the shadows. I lent into everything, even the most uncomfortable parts of myself. I just lent into it. So here's your reminder too. If things are triggering you, if you do see things and you're like, oh, it's just always, like I said, the highlight reel, sometimes that pisses people off when it's just the highlight reel. It's triggering you. It's triggering you for a reason.
Yes.
Lean into it because I promise you that's going to unlock something for you. Was
Yeah.
there anything
And
that used to trigger you that you're just like, "Oh, okay. Now I understand what a trigger is. I need to like lean into here."
100% when I would see someone happy in a relationship or having a family or just being happy because I never knew how to truly be happy. So how can I celebrate someone's happiness if I don't know how to be happy with myself? It's like, how can you celebrate someone's success when you don't even know the meaning of success for yourself? And like you said, like if there's something that's triggering you, lean into it because it's something that your self-conscious is telling you, well, you need to work on this. You're ready for it if you're allowing yourself to feel this way. But yeah, for me, it was just seeing the joy and happiness of other people. And I know that sounds so bad, but I know a lot of people can relate to that as well. I know women can relate to that as well. I didn't know what love was. I didn't know how to love myself. And so when I saw someone happy, it triggered me so much. And just a little backstory for me and how I started my journey, it wasn't until it was COVID. But was the silver lining. I think a lot of people went on this healing journey during COVID as well. But I was also pregnant. And I told myself, I can't tell my daughter to love herself and to tell her that she has a purpose and to do things for herself when I can't even say that to myself and believe it.
Yeah.
So I had to work on that. I worked on my healing journey while I was pregnant with my daughter. And even after giving birth to her, I was still on that healing journey. And it wasn't until I was able to do that for myself, I was able to finally celebrate other women and
Yeah.
be happy for them. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you said that because I think that for one, childbirth is definitely an awakening. There is a rebirth. And
Yes.
as cliche as that sounds, it truly is. I've got 3 children, and every single time I had a child, I was reborn. And the third one is why we're here today.
They give you a new purpose and a new meaning and a new like view on life.
Yeah. And they challenge you and they
Yeah.
trigger you and
Yeah.
they show you where you need to grow and evolve and to
Yes.
heal.
But you know how you were saying earlier, we are forever students. Like when you said that, like what popped in my mind was, but you know what, who are the greatest teachers are? Our children.
They are. They are. And they are such a gift. Honestly,
Yeah.
truly blessed for each of them. And then each of them are their own little humans. But it is so true because, we can sit here all day and we can tell ourselves all the things that we need to do for ourselves, but we actually truly need to embody it because our children, they are watching. It's not
Yes.
what you say, it's what you do.
Yes.
Children will pick up. You could tell them anything, but if your actions are different, they'll follow your actions. They learn from your actions.
Yes.
And I've really been looking at that a lot more recently. And my eldest has just turned 7. My youngest is just about to turn 3. And then I've got a beautiful 5-year-old in the middle. My boy, poor child, he's like the middle child of like 2 girls. And anyway, nah. They're all beautiful, but it's definitely been recently where Mick and I have been having conversations around how else do we want to deepen our relationships with our children, because your children only ever want to have a beautiful relationship with their parents. They want that love from their parents and to be seen and to be heard and to be held and supported. So we've been deepening into that, how can we do that more for ourselves and for them? And so this is a beautiful conversation to go with that because it's being really aware of what are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? What are you going to pass on? How are you going to
Yes.
learn? And from this point forward, there are things that are bothering you or things that you don't necessarily love about your life, maybe about your business as well. Then you get to choose to change that. It doesn't have to stay the way that it is just because it's always been that way. Or if something's triggering you, lean in, please lean in.
Yes.
What is success to you? What is freedom to you? Why are you doing this? Because when your why is so much greater and it evokes that emotion within you, that's when you can't quit and you can't fail if you don't quit.
And again, it comes back to the power of choice. We ultimately have the choice of what we choose. And I shared something recently, choose your hard. Every decision that we make is going to be hard, but which choice of that hard is going to take you further to help you in your journey of growth and becoming?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. I do always lean into that. My mantra used to be, I can do hard things when I first
I love
started.
that.
Yeah. And it was and now that's actually what I get my kids to say. So when we taught them how to ride their bikes, when we taught all the different things, we always say, you can do hard things. And they're like, I can do hard things. And it's just the mantra because we don't say I can't. That's just not allowed in our house. We say I can do hard things. So that's a lifelong thing as well. All
I'm
right.
going to write that down. I need to remember that for
Yeah.
myself.
I can do hard things. It's beautiful because sometimes things do feel like you're pushing shit uphill and you're like, what do I do here? I don't know what step to take. You don't have that clarity, but you just remember that you can do hard things. You've done hard things before and you'll
Yes.
continue to do hard things and grow and evolve. And that's the beauty of making yourself uncomfortable. So, how can everybody find you?
Oh, they can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is at yes, it's me, Mary Joyce
Beautiful.
underscore. Oh, on my website. Yeah.
Amazing. And I know that you do have a 30-minute clarity call. So we'll pop the links to
Yes.
that in the show notes. And you also do have reflection and journal prompts for everyone to get, which is a free resource. So I'll link to that as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
But thank you so much for coming on and enlightening us around what trauma is and transitioning. And actually, there was actually so much in this conversation. Conversation went honestly here, there, and everywhere. But thank you so
Oh,
much. And also for everyone listening and for our beautiful members in the Matrix membership. Mary Joyce is coming in next month to do a masterclass in there for us, which I'm really, really excited to do because we could just dive so much deeper. So Thank you so much. I can't wait to have you in the membership and share your wisdom with us. But thank you so much for everything you've already shared. You have such a beautiful, kind nature. You can feel the energy just coming off you. And even,
Oh, thank you so much.
if people are watching this on YouTube, and yes, my podcasts do go up on YouTube. If you didn't know that, now you do. So yeah, you just have such a calm energy with you. And
Oh, thank you.
yeah,
If only you
it's
could see me beforehand.
like manic running around. Oh my God, like babysitter.
It's like mind, calm down, be at the same space, mouth and mind.
I think we're all a bit like that. That's life, right? I'm kid free today, so it's not manic over here, but this is day one back to school and kinder and all the things. The last 2 weeks of school holidays, manic. Anyway, but thank you so much for coming on, and I will see you again very soon.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I would absolutely love it if you could please leave me a 5-star review and let me know your thoughts. Remember, everything you desire and deserve is just on the other side of your own resistance. So take that next step.